40 years before that, this was the home to a WGBH radio, which is, if you're from the Boston area, you would know it as like the local do-it-all radio station. They do like sports, news, weather, they do it all. They now have a different headquarters in a different part of Allston, Massachusetts, but this was their home for 40 years. And they also did like TV productions and stuff too. So Julia Child, the French chef, the French cooking chef, was actually in the second and third floors of this building cooking, launching the French cooking program in this building. So pretty cool stuff. There was a popular TV show back in like the 80s and 90s that was also filmed here called Zoom. So quite a bit happened in this place, and structurally it's remained largely the same from those days. So, it's always interesting to see, if you could time travel back and like what happened where we stand today. It's pretty cool to think about. And then about a little over 10 years ago, Harvard repurposed this building. You probably saw it's called Batten Hall on the outside of this building. This building is now renamed Batten Hall, named after Frank Batten, who's a Harvard Business School graduate and the figure behind the Weather Channel, which is like the premier news source for weather in the United States. So the first floor of Batten Hall is the Harvard Innovation Labs. Second and third floors are now classroom spaces for Harvard Business School students, because we do sit on the Harvard Business School campus across Harvard. So a little background into how we came to be. And then more specifically, why does the YLAI exist? We're here also, November of 2011 is when we opened, so we're in our 12th year. And we're here because of something called the One Harvard Initiative, which was launched by Drew Faust, the president of Harvard before Larry Bacow. The One Harvard Initiative was essentially addressing how there are 13 degree granting schools across Harvard. If you go to Harvard, you usually have to specify to that person which school you go to. Between Harvard Law, Kennedy, the School of Education, the School of Design, Harvard Medical School, Harvard College for the undergrads, Harvard Business School. As you can see, there's so many different schools across Harvard, and they're very siloed. So you could spend your entire time at Harvard Business School, for example, and never meet someone from all these different schools. We're all in the same region, right? But it's pretty decentralized. Everybody kind of just hangs out in their own group. So the One Harvard Initiative was trying to address that. How do we bring together people from all these different disciplines under one roof? And so we're one of the first pushes in that initiative. So at the highest level, if you take away anything today, we serve any degree seeking student at Harvard, no matter what school you're in, under the pillars of entrepreneurship and innovation. So if you're interested in those things, or students who are deeply embedded in those things, we have resources for those students. So kind of a high level view of what we do. And then I'll go into more specifically what we do.
That's great.
Yes. Cool. All right, let's walk inside. Let's do this. They may have stragglers.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, the students have left. It's summer break now for students, and so this is when we start some construction projects, so you may hear some banging. Much apologies. This is basically, the person service Harvard alumni who also have their own startups and need support, But yeah, this is basically it, and it's intentionally made open so that, and intentionally no assigned seats because we want so. That's kind of what we're trying to accomplish as far as the space goes. And a good way to just begin to talk about that is through an example of a venture that actually came out of the iLab. And so the example I like to give is always Vaxis Technologies. They were here as current students at the iLab. When they graduated, they joined our alumni program. And then they're in vaccine delivery, so they need lab space, like wet lab space. So we have something called the Pagliuca Harvard Life Lab, which is a facility next door. It's a fully functioning wet lab facility for teams in the life sciences and the biotech space. And so they moved on to that space as well. So they're kind of an interesting example of a team that went through our entire pipeline. It doesn't always happen that way. And what makes them even more interesting to me is that they are 4 founders for that venture, all met from 4 different Harvard schools. One of them is from Harvard Business School, the other is from Harvard Kennedy School of Government, another from Harvard Law School, and then the last one was a PhD student at the College of Arts and Science. So they met in that space actually. It's a classroom space that we have for faculty to teach their classes. We also host a lot of workshops and stuff in there. And they met in that space. And they formed Vaxis. I believe it was part of the class work of like, let's form teams and like work on a thing together. The PhD student was doing research in vaccine delivery. The business school student was like, oh, okay, I can be your business CEO. You need a lawyer, so it kind of like came together, I think, serendipitously. Yeah.
So like the life sciences and then it came here.
Yeah.
And, like, how did that work?
Good question. So the Life Lab is a unique space in that it's meant for ventures to do their work in science. And it's unique in that you have to pay rent to be in that space. Everything at the iLab for current students and such is free, but the wet lab space is a rent-based place. The unique value proposition of the Life Lab is that lab space is very, very expensive. The work that some of these teams are doing in the life sciences, like a couple $1,000s is pennies to them. They're working in like the hundreds of thousands of dollars, in the millions of dollars range. And so it's an expensive industry they're in. And lab space, as it turns out, is extremely expensive. And I don't know if you've noticed all the construction going on in the city of Boston. A lot of that is they're building more lab spaces because there's so many teams that need space, So the value proposition of the Life Lab is that you can get lower than market rate rent if you're a Harvard alumni in the life sciences with a venture. Now, your question pokes on a tricky part of Harvard in that some of these PhD students at Harvard are doing research in a lab at Harvard. That's usually under like a professor, and any of the research that is done in that lab is owned by Harvard, right? So you can't use that research to create your own venture. Now, I think in this case with the PhD student, she had done her own independent research, and so that's I think why it was eligible to come in here and like she could work on her venture that way. But the IP, the intellectual property protection of some of these ventures can be tricky if they're coming out of labs. The thing I'll mention with the iLab is that we're completely IP free.
Okay.
So anything that students work on here, Harvard takes no slice of it. It's part of what we're trying to do is cultivate psychological safety here. Harvard can be a very competitive environment for these students, and we're just trying to not do any of that here. Come here, try your venture, whether it fails or succeeds, we'll help you get to either place. We're just trying to create the circumstances for that feeling here. But the life sciences, that could be, it can get tricky there with the research done in the labs.
And the costs are out of their pocket, like to use the web lab. I mean, it's an investment, of course. But,
yeah. For current, so it's a good question because it's an alumni space, so it's only meant for teams that have fundraised and have the money to pay the rent and pay their employees. Like usually they're like 5 or 6 people deep at least. But if you're a current student and you've accelerated so much that you need lab space to do testing for your venture, you can get a bench there, I believe. You can apply. And if you're a current 19 vaccine, for example, or most vaccines, a lot of medication needs to be kept at super low temperatures to be effective. Vaxxas, they were in the Life Lab. Now they're in their own lab space across the river on Memorial Drive. We visited their lab just to check in on how you're doing, and they gave us a pretty staggering statistic that a very high percentage of vaccines are not usable by the time they reach a final destination because there was some break in the cold chain. So there's a waste factor involved. There's also an energy factor involved to power these low temperature trucks, and there's a reach factor, right? You can only deliver these vaccines where those trucks can go, or so they took it a step further. They made a patch that you just self-adhere to your skin that delivers the vaccine. And so their hope one day is you just buy a vaccine online and you can get it shipped anywhere in the world, just like you would an iPhone case or something like that. Wow. They're now, I believe, in the clinical trial space, essentially trying to test it so that it actually works, which is, I think, a very scary stage for some of these ventures because Vaxxas at least has spent over 10 years on this. But it goes to show the beauty of what can happen at the iLab. They are a representation of that cross-disciplinary learning. I mentioned the one Harvard part of all this. I think it's truly important because it reflects what we believe here, in that if you're trying to solve problems for the world, you should be in a room full of people who think differently than you, who are from different backgrounds, from different disciplines, right? And Vaxxas is a beautiful example of a team that came together from these 4 different schools, 4 different disciplines, and if they're successful, they could change the world, Now, not every venture at the iLab is like that. Some of these ventures are just 2 Harvard Business School students, and that's it. Some of these ventures are not in the life sciences, right? We have teams in the social impact space, in the not-for-profit, education, ed tech. We're industry agnostic, right? We have teams from all over. But I like to start with Vaxxas because they're just a super cool example. So,
That's great.
yeah.
Really cool.
All right, let's keep walking. And if you guys have backpacks, you can leave it on this bench here, if you'd like. Yeah.
Yeah, we would love to.
Sorry.
Hey, how are you?
What?
Oh, cool. Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Hi.
Please, yeah.
So I'm Shanda Rodriguez. I'm from Guyana.
Hi.
I'm currently a farmer and an entrepreneur in farming.
Okay, gotcha.
My name is Madeline Rodriguez. I am from Belize, Central America,
Yeah.
and I am within the youth industry.
Beauty, okay.
Nice to meet you. I'm Livia Diaz Ulabares. I'm from Colombia. I'm co-founder of an organization that works on education through arts and culture. And I'm
Okay.
a researcher here.
Gotcha.
Ivan from Mexico. Our startup's Coco. We are closing the digital divide.
Hi, I'm Jo Marie from Jamaica, and I'm in the legal and brand space.
Okay, got it.
Hi, I'm Dani Chesoke from Suriname, and I'm into real estate.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Shireen Joseph from St. Lucia. I'm into social media and digital marketing.
Okay, gotcha.
Hi, I'm Felisa from Jamaica. Well, I'm Felisa Ricketts from Jamaica, and I'm in STEM education. The name of my company is Western STEM Academy.
Right.
I am Andres Uyuste from Bolivia. I'm in the pet food industry.
Okay, gotcha.
I'm Lucas from Brazil. I have a fresh pasta factory in Brazil with sustainable practices.
Yeah.
Sell through grocery stores, supermarkets, restaurants, that.
Very cool. Wow. Well, I love the diversity in what you guys are working on. This is great. And the beauty of this space, that I've seen is that people, no matter what industry you're in, the trials and tribulations, the problems you face as a founder are similar. Every founder is trying to raise money. Every founder is trying to find a business partner or a technical co-founder, or just a co-founder they can trust that they can grow this business with. Every founder is also wondering, is this a business that's scalable, or is this a side project I do and get a full-time job instead? Here, let's make some space here. It turns out is a very lonely path where you're basically being told no all day, and that your idea is never going to work, so you should just give up, right? Basically, all these founders are being told that every single day, and by coming here, you meet your peers that are doing similar things. This is an example of this. And a sense of community forms, right? When it turns out misery does love company, and when you're going through basically the same experience together, that can bond you all. So that's kind of the power I've seen can happen with a place like this. You know, because if you think about it, the iLab as a whole, and I'll go into more granular, like some of the resources we actually have. But in general, like we could have been an entirely virtual entity where this doesn't exist at all. All of our offerings are online. Zoom and Skype calls are all the connections and meetings that you have. If we do an event, you could just rent a space for a day, But this place exists because we've heard from folks like you all, students that have come and gone from here, that one of the things they appreciated the most while they were here at Harvard is the fact that they had a place to go to work on their venture. There's somewhat of a psychologically validating thing that happens when you know that there's a place that was built for you to come and work on your thing. And we can keep walking over here. You'll see that we have conference rooms for students who need it. Instead of saying, come meet me at Starbucks, you can say,
This one? This?
I think the space element is important.
This is for shorts.